Hey guys, it's Graham. Welcome back to the Midnight Ride. This is my review of, I did not mean for this to rhyme, Crimson Tide, 1995 movie starring Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. Actually, the cast on this thing is pretty loaded. The late, great James Gandolfini is in it, Viggo Mortensen, and then there are even some smaller parts played by Steve Zahn and Ryan Phillippe. So, a lot of up-and-comers in this movie that came out in 95. Just turns 30 this year. Heard of it, never seen it before. Right out of the gate, content warning. It is rated R. There's about a dozen F-bombs in it. Not a fan of that word. Nevertheless, I'm kind of also of the school of thought that words are instruments, and in storytelling, they have a role to play. I feel like this was right on the cusp of being used a little bit too much. Nevertheless, we are dealing with sailors. So if you're going to do something near an accurate portrayal, well, there it is. The premise of this movie, I can best sum it up as we try to come up with rules and procedures for handling dangerous situations, and we can cover 99% of them. This is the 1%. If you've ever seen, I believe it's a Jimmy Stewart movie, right, called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, there's a scene where this guy is trying to decide between two candidates that he's got to pick for something, and he goes to do a coin toss, and the coin lands right on its edge. I think this is a movie that is trying to depict that kind of scenario in that, well, it's the 90s, and so we're right out of the end of the Cold War, and the Russian Federation is still fragmented. There are little separatist groups popping up here and there. And some rebellious group is just taking control of part of Russia's nuclear arsenal. And so America goes from DEFCON 5 to 4 to 3. Things are getting tense. And there's a submarine captained by Gene Hackman's character, whose name I've already forgotten. His name is just Gene Hackman. And I remember that Washington's character was named Hunter. Anyway, Hackman needs a new XO, executive officer. Here's what I know about the command structure on a submarine. There's the captain, the executive officer, and the chief of the boat. So the CO, the XO, and the Cobb. Although there was a character named Cobb who was not the Cobb, so it got a little bit confusing. From what I understand, it's the captain's job to make mission decisions. It's the XO's job to see to the operation of the boat, and the chief of the boat's job has to do with, I don't know, like the crew or mechanics or something. I'm probably botching that, so let me know. But certain leadership roles are delegated because decisions can't be unilaterally made, especially on a submarine that has tactical nuclear strike capability. In fact, the movie opens up with a text scroll that says that basically these submarine captains have nuclear launch decisions, and that more or less puts them on equal footing with the president in terms of political decisions that they can make if they decide to go rogue or whatever. And so that decision is pulled from the hands of one man. It has to be made between the XO and the CO. And so what happens when the XO and the CO can't agree on something, and one of them is driven to go one way and the other's driven to go the other? Hackman and Washington play off of each other extremely well in this movie. In effect, the movie is an argument between two different styles of decision-making that both have their strengths and their weaknesses. In this case, Hackman is an extremely decorated and experienced man. He's been captaining submarines for a really long time. He had even led Navy SEALs at one point in Panama. Like, the guy knows what he's doing. But he's also a little bit trigger happy. Seems like too much of a pejorative term. But he tends to be old school in terms of his thinking. A little bit of tough love, that kind of thing. And there are a couple of minor rules that he breaks because, hey, he's the captain and he can do it. Like, he keeps this dog with him all the time. He's got a dog that he trusts. Is like, this is my dog. My dog's a good judge of character, and so there you go. Whereas Hunter, Denzel Washington's character, is a little bit more by the book. Like he went up to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. He went to Harvard. He's got a different pedigree. It's white collar versus blue collar. There are some things that he has in common with his captain, but for the most part, like they come from different worlds. While they are out at sea, and this Russian separatist faction gets underway, they receive a command from DoD saying, hey, we're on the cusp of going to nuclear war with Russia. And then the Alabama, the name of the boat, they get into a torpedo fight with another Russian submarine, and they get their radio damaged. And right as it got damaged, they were receiving a transmission that they can't decipher one way or the other. And so from there, it becomes a matter of arguing over, well, what did this mean? What do we do? The captain wants to do one thing and the XO wants to do something else. And clock's ticking, they've got to repair the radio, but the Russians will have nuclear capability in a certain amount of time. They're dealing with a mutiny. This is a thriller that does tension extremely well, and the performances are delivered really, really well. I know that Viggo Mortensen did a couple of military movies before he played Aragorn. He was in G.I. Jane. He was in a couple of other things. I'd never seen this one, and I'd never seen this type of performance from him before. I've never actually seen a whole lot of Viggo Mortensen movies. And the performance that he delivers here, it's just, I'm going to go back to the blue collar, white collar comparison. I've never been in the military, but I've been blue collar pretty much my whole life. And like the way that he just captures the mannerisms of somebody in that position, just it's very, very convincing. Like he sells the performance. Most of these actors do. James Gandolfini, he plays a very James Gandolfini character. I know his character's name was Doherty, but he was still bringing some of that Sopranos energy to this role. Yeah, it was just tough guys locked in a submarine under a tense situation and they can't agree on something. And the movie plays out over 2 hours. If you've never seen it, I don't want to spoil the ending. Suffice it to say that it was very satisfying, and again, it goes back to that coin toss analogy. This is the one scenario where the coin lands on its side. What do you do? It's worth analysis and it's worth discussion. And I think crafting a story in this way, it'll be successful depending on the delivery of your performers. And it is Washington and Hackman who really carry this movie at the peak of their talents. At this point, Hackman had been making movies for 30 years, and Denzel was he'd been around for a minute, but he shows those early chops that he had that have carried him through his career up to today. It's why he's one of the most well-loved actors in Hollywood. Is he's just always been able to bring that kind of what's the word that I'm looking for? Like stability and just solidness to a role. Like whenever he's on screen, you're like, all right, he's in control of this scene here. Except for when Hackman steps on screen and it's like, all right, immovable object and unstoppable force. Just fantastic writing and fantastic concept, but superb execution here. So really, really great movie, Crimson Tide. I'm glad I finally got around to watching it. Just mind the language, I guess. It's not surprising to me that this came out a handful of years after The Hunt for Red October. People were hungry for another submarine movie. I would put this one on par with that one. Speaking of which, Hunt for Red October is on YouTube Movies as well. So if you're bored with your streaming selection on whatever other services you're paying for, give a look-see over on the YouTube Movies. I think they're just, most of them are just included. Like you can buy and rent movies through YouTube. I never have. But the free stuff is getting better. That's pretty cool. Anyway, if you've seen it, let me know what you think. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.